I found it. Yes. December 22nd, 1990, from MTV. It's their new show, The Year in Rock. That's it. It's about censorship. It's about freedom of speech. I know this sounds crazy. Look, I just want to show some of you younger peers how MTV was important for me. It was such an important medium growing up. And if you watch this clip, you see how drastically different it is. But more importantly, you know, this stuff that's happening in America right now, it's the same. It's not changing. In fact, it's getting worse. What the hell? But somehow, I just feel like we gotta look to the past some more, and so we can fight this horrible future.
1990 was a year in which freedom spread like a long, smoldering brush fire across Eastern Europe. Back here at home, though, one of our most important freedoms, the freedom of speech, was under attack by both conservatives and liberals, and musicians got hit by much of the flack.
Two-Live Crew. Subliminal messages. Parental advisory.
If it's going to happen to records, well, won't it happen to everything else?
I mean, who decides what's obscene?
If you don't like it, don't buy it.
Obscenity, if you put a label on it, is still obscenity.
The First Amendment to the Constitution is very clear about freedom of speech, and yet somebody, somewhere, is always trying to carve out an exception to outlaw words or images or actions that they don't like. The most blatant attempt at outright censorship this year was directed at the Miami rap group 2Live Crew and their admittedly X-rated raunch album, As Nasty as They Wanna Be. Is this stuff stupid? Well, yes.
I think the brothers are kind of ignorant.
But is it actually bad for you? Bad enough to be banned?
We talk the same thing as Dice Clay talks. We talk the same thing that Murphy talked. You know, it's just hooked up to a rap beat.
No one has ever produced as sexually explicit an album in the history of the world, and no one, in my opinion, has ever produced an obscene record album, ever, except for this one album by one rap group out of my hometown, Miami, Florida, and that's why I've gone after him.
Jack Thompson, a born-again Florida lawyer and moral crusader, mounted a faxing campaign to police and prosecutors, urging a crackdown on 2Live Crew. The immediate effect of this was to help 2Live Crew sell lots and lots of dirty records.
They walked out of that small town in Florida and went, "Thank you, Jesus."
This controversy has elevated to them to this huge status, and the bottom line is they're probably one of the weakest rap bands ever in the history of rap music.
Then, in June, a local federal judge ruled that the 2Live Crew album was obscene. 2 days later, record store owner Charles Freeman was arrested for selling it, and 2 days after that, the group itself was busted for performing songs from it at an adults-only nightclub. Suddenly, the censors seemed to be winning.
We got them. We got them real good.
Who would ever think that here in the United States of America, we will be telling grown people what they can purchase and what they can't purchase?
When the obscenity case against 2Live Crew finally came to court, though, a mostly white jury laughed it right back out again.
We, the jury, find as follows. As to the defendant, Luther Campbell, the defendant is not guilty.
That wasn't the end of the new censorship hysteria, though. Jesse Helms led a charge against the National Endowment for the Arts for its support of sexually explicit art. A couple of local authorities tried to crack down on a Jane's Addiction album cover, but were quickly beaten back. And liberals even got into the act, instituting restrictions against racially and sexually sensitive speech on college campuses. And, of course, a pair of Midwestern evangelists called the Peters Brothers were still on the job, burning what seemed like every rock record they could lay their hands on.
Uriah Heep, this is their album entitled Demons and Wizards. We'll be burning that tonight.
Parental guidance, explicit lyrics.
At its peak, the anti-rock frenzy created a clamor in at least 20 states for record stickering laws, but these proposals withered away when the music industry obligingly agreed to start stickering records on its own, a concept that not all musicians found objectionable.
I don't see anything wrong with putting a sticker on there that says this record contains extremely profane lyrics. I don't think that that is a crime.
The most surreal proceeding of the year was certainly the subliminal messages trial of the English metal band Judas Priest. The charge, burying the mysterious phrase "do it" in the mix of an album and thereby driving two very troubled high school dropouts to suicide.
I think the real obscenity is that these two kids' deaths are being used to raise a lot of cash.
In the end, common sense and Judas Priest prevailed.
We knew the verdict couldn't be anything else. I mean, there are no subliminal messages on the album. The whole thing was farcical. I mean, it should never have got to court.
All of these setbacks for censors serve to embolden civil libertarians and to help fuel a music industry-sponsored registration campaign called Rock the Vote.
If you vote, at least you can't complain because you've done your part in it.
We all have certain beliefs and we think, oh, it's censorship is crazy, everyone's against it, but unfortunately not everyone is against it, and those of us who are, a lot of us aren't out there voting, and so this is the issue of the day.
Obviously, although a few battles were won this year, the issue of censorship was still very much alive.
Who knows? It might be George Michael's. He might not be saying, I want your sex next year. You know what I'm saying? And then Guns N' Roses, and, you know, people who sell a lot of records. Next thing you know, Madonna, she got to put her clothes on her share, you know. Before you know it, the music industry will be no more.
No more censorship!
In the end, though, even the hardest rockers agreed that self-appointed censors and other freelance prudes do sometimes serve a purpose.
Thank you, Tipper and Jesse, for making sure that as long as there are a few four-letter words in the album, it will always sell an extra 1 million copies.
So that was 1990, a year in which rock and pop musicians were at the forefront of a new fight against censorship and cultural repression.